So why did you want to start a business on Alberta Street?
I started mainly because of all the meetings that was held about what the process, what they wanted to see on Alberta Street. And after going to meetings for a few months, I said, I just need to see what's going on. And the property that I bought on the corner of 14th Place came up for sale through the county for auction, foreclosure. And that's how I actually bought that building. And I bought it mainly to keep it in the community because I knew it had been black owned by bosses. And I really wanted to make sure it stayed black owned in the community. So I bought it for that reason. Got in there and discovered a whole bunch of things. So I cleaned it up and I put it up for rent. And the requirements that I had was you had to leave your doors unlocked during business hours and no bars. And I couldn't find anyone that wanted to rent from me. So that's why I ended up opening a coffee house. I thought that would be the easiest thing to open was a coffee house. Little did I know, but anyway.
So how did you get the money to do all this?
I didn't. I actually sold a house I had on Thompson Street, which had a gallery in it, and with credit cards. That's how I did it. I basically took credit cards and sweat equity and did a lot of work myself. Got my sons to come up and help with some of the work, and that's how I did the building, the transition of the building was that way.
So clearly you're a visionary. What was Alberta Street like when you came here? How had the city abandoned this space?
Alberta Street was actually, it was not trafficked at all. The buses did not run after 9 o'clock down Alberta Street. And it just basically shut down at dusk when it got dark. Not very many people on the street. And I had all kinds of people calling me and said, well, how can you go to Alberta? I mean, I had friends who lived here 20 years who never came up on Alberta Street. And if they had to come to any of the schools, they would drive up on either 33rd and come in, or they would drive on MLK and drive up on 15th or something, but they wouldn't drive down Alberta Street. So when I was first working, I used to come and work in the building till all hours of the night, till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And at first I thought, I'm not sure. People say, well, how do you feel secure? And I said, well, I'm okay with it. But then I discovered that people in the community were not as bad as what people thought they were. They were angry. And I could see the anger in a lot of the young men's faces. I could see the disconnect with a lot of people that were on the street. And so I started just saying hi, talking to people and stuff. And I think they thought I was crazy because most people didn't talk to anyone. And so that's how I started working. When I first opened the coffee house, I had someone I knew, I used to do interior design work, that called me and said, so do you have a dog? And I go, no, what do I need a dog for? And they go, well, you don't have a dog in there? I go, no, I don't have a dog in here. And people just felt very insecure about coming into the community, but I never had a problem. I mean, I had some problems, but I mean, nothing I couldn't handle,
And you described a bit of the atmosphere, the folks that were here, that inhabited here.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like when you spoke about those people. That young man, the gang member, is this young woman that...
Well, I mean, there was one down on 14th Street that when I had the coffee house open, I used to, on Sundays sometimes, I would have an open jam session. And there was a young guy that came up and was rapping. And so when he got through rapping, I said, gee, you actually rap and you didn't have any vulgar language. And he goes, well, I know how to rap to people like you. And I just thought that was really cute, that he could rap to people like me, But I mean, he rapped, the language was clean. He was, and he was he was a troubled young man, but it was interesting because one time there was an incident in the coffee house where he was fighting with a kid and they were running around and had knives and stuff. And I said, hey, you need to cut that out. And then one day his mother came in with him and he was petrified. You could just see it on his face, and he stood behind her going like, and so she talked to me for a minute. She goes, I said, how are you doing? She goes, oh, my son? I said, yeah. She goes, oh, he's been in here before? I said, yeah, he's been in here. He's been fine. And he came back and told me later, he says, thank you. And I knew that I had been accepted from the community when I was out working in the garden one day and this young kid came by and said, how's it going? And I went, well, they're talking to me.
You're talking about relationships.
Well, because I think that's what a community is. It's a relationship. I don't have to love you, but I have to respect you as a human being. I mean, everyone has their own ways about doing things, and I don't agree with them, but they're part of the tapestry of the community.
So could you give me a bit more about what was here? Because when I was reading that there were businesses, but there weren't the kind that was opening and inviting folks in.
No, there were service industries, and there were businesses that had been here for a long time. There was Wagmeister, who was actually the second, third generation there. There was Rexall Plumbing, which was in the second generation. There was Coast Janitorial. There was West Coast Janitorial, which were both African American owned, but second generation going on. But they were all service industries, so nobody came to their doors. There was Acme Glass, and all of these people had bars on their doors. You had to ring to get in. They would let you in, but you couldn't walk in their business without being let in. And I just found that to be terrible. So that was one of the things when I worked on Alberta Street was with my tenants. You could not have bars on your windows. You had to have posted hours you're open, and you couldn't have locked doors.
What a novel idea.
So, yeah.
So what was your relationship with the city like?
My relationship with the city was it was nondescript. I didn't have any relationship with the city at all. I did what I had to do, as far as the building and the renovation and stuff. The city wasn't involved in that, except when it came time to pull a permit or something like this. But they pretty much, in a way, it was good because I was left alone. So I was allowed to do what I needed to do to be able to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. And that's good. So.
And as I was reading, there were some abandonment issues. Could you give some examples of that?
Well, I think part of that is that they made part of Alberta a drug-free zone. And so it was a drug-free zone, and plus there was no prostitution that was allowed on the street. So where the zone was, it'd be interesting because that's where the prostitute would stop. They would not come into that no-zone area. And so, and the drug-free zone was the same way. But I got to know these people because they were on the street every day. So you would get to see how the street would change. So like, it was like you could set a clock by the way the street changed. So like in the morning from about 9 to 10, you'd have the working people come, or earlier, about 6 o'clock, I think, in the morning. And then around 4, then you'd have the light traffickers will come out. In other words, you'd have the drug people will come out, and you would have some of the prostitution come out. And then at 10, it was where it would be the heavier drug traffic and the more diligent prostitution would come out.
So when you said at 10, because at that time back then, TriMet, as you had said,
had stopped servicing the neighborhood. So the street was pretty quiet. So it was left up to the community people who did whatever they did, And so with that going on, you just could tell the different personalities, how the street would change in that personality. And it was, the one thing that happened was when I actually came and renovated this building where the Alberta Cooperative Grocery is.
This building right here?
Mm-hmm. When we renovated the Alberta Co-op building, we had an open house because it was one of the major things that had been done on the street. And we took the apartments that are above, renovated those, and actually made it into 5 apartments above. And I remember when the mayor came through at that time, which was Vera Katz, and she said, what can we do to help you? And I looked at her and I said, nothing, just stay out of my way and let me do what I need to do. Because the city in itself, with the bureaucratic process, it really stymies what happens or what you can do. Because if you've only got $20 to spend, by the time the city gets through with it, that $20 doesn't go anywhere. I can spend $20 and do something with it rather than spending it for the process or thinking about it or planning and everything else. And so it became a viable part of the community. And then the co-op actually rented it, and they've been there since then, since 2000.
Oh, wow. Since 2000?
Yeah, 2000. So they've been there.
And growing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They've been there since 2000. So it's been, it's been a process. It's added to the community and stuff. So it's worked really well.
Great value.
Yeah.
So the whole idea, your vision, continued the Alberta Art Walk. How did that come to be? How did you birth that?
Well, actually, that came about, the Alberta Art Walk came about with Magnus Johansson, which was a realtor, which was interesting because we both moved from the Elliott neighborhood. And he had started the Genesis program with Elliott neighborhood, and he was managing some property down on 30th in Alberta. And he came up with the Alberta Art Walk. And so there was about 3 of us who came from, it was just kind of like one of these things. 3 people who actually did a lot of the work on Alberta Street came from the Elliott neighborhood. So there was Magnus Johansson, and then there was Eric Wentland and myself. And even though we didn't plan on coming up here together, we just came up together. I was at 14th, Eric was down on 24th, and Magnus was on 30th, and then a partner went in on 16th.
Wow.
And so that relationship was there before we came up here. And as a result, when we had the art walk, all businesses, any business that had their doors open could show art. And the art walk actually was year round. It wasn't just in the summertime, it was actually year round. So during the snow, rain, anything else, people would still be doing the art walk.
Was it, it wasn't just identified for the Thursday? Was it the Thursday?
It was, yeah, it was Thursday. It was the last Thursday. It was called the Alberta Art Walk. And any business that wanted to show art could do it. So barbershops, salons, stores, anyone that wanted to show art did.
So how did that evolve or devolve from the art walk to last Thursday, and your feelings about that?
Well, I think what happened was that when we were doing the art walk, it became where it became very profitable, and especially for the artists. And it was also very fashionable. And so a lot of people wanted to come on the street. And I had an issue with people that were not from the community coming on the street without having some contribution. So I used to tell people, I said, you know, to let someone set up their business in front of your store, it's sort of like strip mining, because if someone only has $10 to spend and they spend it before they get in your store, you don't get the money, but the person on the street who doesn't have to pay for the business and doesn't have to pay the licensing fees and everything else is taking money basically away from your business. So I said, there should be some charge. Well, we had a discussion and people thought, well, you shouldn't charge people. I said, okay. But I made my tenants, which was from 16th to 14th, actually either charge the people out there or else invite people to be out in front of their business. So they knew who was out there. And the rest of the street just did whatever they did. I just didn't get involved in it too much.
So with that vision, and we know that you've been written up, Alaska Magazine, worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been some really great things happening, but how do you see the best of both worlds? From your vision to where it is now, how do you see that becoming?
I think that Alberta Street is sort of like having a child. You have to constantly nurture and monitor that child. You can't just say, oh, we've arrived and let it go, because it doesn't. If you don't do that, then what happens is it sort of plateaus and then it drops off. So you have to really nurture it. And so I've always told people that it's always a work in progress. It's always a work in progress. You can't just say, oh, well, we've arrived, and then say, no, we haven't. Because now with all the new businesses we have on the street, the work of progress is to make sure those businesses interact with the community, that they understand they're in a community. They are not on Alberta Street, but they're in a business node community, which involves from Alberta Street going north and from Alberta Street going south.
How does that, what would your response be to this Alberta Street and community and gentrification? Where is that intersection?
Well, gentrification is an interesting term, because I've had people write gentrification in my buildings, which I think is kind of interesting considering I'm from Portland, and but they have written them on there. I look at gentrification a little bit differently than some people, mainly because I'm African American and I'm born here and raised here, so I do have different looks on it. I look at there have been people in the community who have been in existence from drugs, gangs, prostitution, and have still lived in their same house, but could not get any money for their house. So at the point when people were claiming gentrification was so bad, these people could now sell their property and actually make money on it and be able to move either, I know a couple of people that moved in care facilities because they had money they could do that with now, or could actually move on to move with their kids or retire someplace else. And before they couldn't do it, because you could actually go on any street up to Prescott, and a house on the north side of Prescott would be, let's say, valued at like $125,000. You could go on the north side of Prescott, and because it would be in Alameda or in Irvington neighborhood, would be worth 3 times that much and would sell for that.
Which reminds me, when you shared, folks started to know they were onto something when someone bought a house for $25,000.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting. Could you share that?
That was on 16th Street. We knew that we had actually arrived, as one would say. There was a house on 16th that went up for sale, and we knew that they had bought it for like $25,000, $24,950, a few years back. And when they went in and they gutted it out and renovated it and put it up for sale, they sold it for $325,000. And I thought, wow, can you believe that? I can't believe that. So we knew that we had arrived because they had done that. And what happened was that the real estate lister coined the area as the Alberta Arts District. And so now it wasn't Northeast Alberta, it was Alberta Arts District. And so when you look at the write-ups that they've done and everything else, it's always been as the Alberta Arts District, which is located in Portland. but it doesn't really push the northeast area. It's now a different area. It's kind of like Eastmoreland, Westmoreland, Laurelhurst. You know, you don't say Laurelhurst is in the southeast. Laurelhurst is its own identity. Yeah.
Wow.
I like your hat. Cute. Yeah. I bought this building, which was really interesting. I bought it. The guy did not want me to see the inside. So I bought the building without seeing the inside
Sight
of it.
unseen.
Sight unseen. I saw the outside, but didn't see the inside. Bought the building sight unseen on a contract. He wanted to do a contract for 5 years. I said fine. So I bought the building, went in, and when I bought it, it was inhabited by some drug sales people. And I could not get the city to get them out. And a bank will give you $50,000, $60,000 for a Cadillac, but they won't give you that for a house. So therefore, we're not going to give you money to help you accumulate property, but we'll give you money to buy a car because we know that's not going to accumulate anything.
That's by design, you know.
Yeah, it is. And
Like-
we buy into
yeah,
it.
You said
Hi.
too, like
Someone's
you
lucky.
beautiful flowers. I'm Antoinette Edwards.
Antoinette.
Yes, good to see you, brother. You know I know you. I love your family,
Thank
brother.
you so much.
Take good care. You got that smile. I'm just saying.
I brought that tree up from the art gallery that was on Thompson Street off of MLK and planted there. So it's still there.
And when you said that, and it's so family friendly, I remember you were talking about how do we make this family friendly? You know, all the bars and how do you close them down? What was your thought around that, making more of a family friendly atmosphere?
I wanted something where, you know, my thing was something where people could see people so you still interact with them. These bars here was to keep people from dogs really from coming up into the garden space. And actually these bars right here came off of a building that was being renovated on MLK. And I drove by one day and I said, so what are you gonna do with those bars? Because it came off some windows. And he said, oh, we're gonna throw them away. I said, okay, well I want them, and I gave him my number. And then I kept driving by, and then one day I happened to drive by and they were taking them down. I said, I want the bars. So I put them in my car and I brought them here and had them made into a fence. So it came from the community on MLK off of a building there.
So family friendly. I love that. So what was happening with the TriMet bus system then, and what did you do?
Well, actually, it wasn't just me. A few of us got together and we formed a business association, our Alberta Business Association. And so we started working with the city on getting just lighting on the street, the bus service to continue at night after 9. And actually that became a community project where we actually met with the community and the different neighborhood associations along Alberta Street. And that was a process that we went through getting that changed. Because one is, it's hard to work someplace and you don't have any service to go to get back and forth. And then once they started the bus servicing, we also got the street lights changed. It made a lot of difference on the street.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a lot of movement.
Yeah, it was now that I look back on it, I mean, it was a lot of work. There was a lot of people that were involved. I think Saban got a grant to help them hire someone to be able to do some of the work and to be able to handle some of the meetings and things like this. There was a lot of work, but I think there was a lot of community work that really pushed that they wanted to see that happen.
So as we're walking up and down Alberta Street, and I'm just bowing to you as Queen of Alberta, what is your vision for it now? But first of all, how does it feel to see all this come to be?
It feels good, but it needs work. I feel like now Alberta has become one of the dirtiest streets in the city. I am not happy with the way it looks as far as cleanliness. But it isn't just Alberta. I will say it's not just Alberta. I mean, I've walked along Division where they put brand new buildings, and last summer when we had a drought, there were more dead plants out in front, and I'm going like, this is your business. When you walk in, you don't think just put a glass of water in that planter right by your door. So I think that sense of disconnect has come to the city itself. And I think that, you know, when I was growing up, this was a city that you could walk barefoot down the sidewalk. You could actually, people's lawns were manicured. People spoke to you when you walked by. But we've become a city of just, I say, more, I would say we're not necessarily inclusive. We've become a city that everyone has their own little nook, and so we don't reach out to other people. But I think it was funny that I thought one day I was watering a plant over on 14th Place, the place I lived, and this woman walked by and she says, "Oh, "Oh, welcome to the neighborhood." And I thought, okay, well, yeah, thank you. I mean, she just moved there, but evidently she thought I had too. But I think that connectedness really needs to go further.
So, Roslyn, what builds community, and specifically, what is needed to build this beloved community?
I think the thing about this community is that because Alberta Street is a mixture of everything, ethnic groups, the religion and the age, and part of it is that you've got grandchildren, you've got grandparents, you've got aunts and uncles that live in the street, and those who have been living here for years or have had family living here, and they still come back to the street. But part of the community is that being in a community is that you recognize that you're in a community. You're not on a street, you're in a community. And as being in a community, you interact with it. Like I said, it's not like you have to love everyone, but you have to respect people who live in a community with you. You respect them as a human being, the same as you want them to respect you. So I greet people and say hi. I take stickers off things, I take signs down, I clean up the street, and because it's part of my street. So there's no way I'd want it. I had a guy one time I was looking at, I was taking some posters off of a telephone pole, and this guy was sitting there waiting to go into the restaurant. He goes, "Oh, I kind of like those." And I said, "I'll tell you what, you give me your address and I'll be happy to come down here and give you some of these posters." He goes, "No." I said, "Well, then what makes you think I like them on my street? If you don't want them on your street."
Yes.
I don't want to be the novelty that you think is great for you to experience, but you don't want to be part of.
Exactly. So if you could add anything else on to that awesome Wikipedia page and your legacy, what would you like it to be? What would you like that statement to be?
My belief in community does not end with me. That it actually is that the community accepts its position, that it is part of a community, and when you move in, there's responsibilities as being in the community, being part of it. You're not just moving in to have an address where you can sell goods, but you're moving into a community. And part of that is that you interact with the community. And matter of fact, when I lease buildings out, that's one of the things I ask them to do, is interact with the community. I ask them to interact with Alberta Main Street. That's sort of a requirement. I ask them to put flowers outside their space. I tell them they cannot lock their door during business hours, and when they lock it during business hours and I find out, I go, "No, can't do that." That's not a choice. It's not an option. It is a requirement. If they're afraid to be in their business, then I tell them they don't need to be on the street. This is not what it's about.
And as you're saying that, I think it's so appropriate that at this space, in this block, that we're there with Malcolm X and the memories of the BEC, and it's still red and green.
Mm-hmm.
And my children attended that, and that you have infused that, the old with the new and the welcoming.
Yeah. I think communities change. We have new businesses on the street. We have a lot of old businesses moving off the street. But my concern is that it doesn't change because people don't feel safe, or it doesn't change because they feel they don't longer want to be on the street. It changes because that's just the evolution of change, and that's what it is. But when new people move in, I have a real fear when I go into a new business and I walk in and they look at me as if like, what can I do for you? And I go, well, first of all, you're a business. So if you're not a business, then I guess you can't do anything for me at all. But if you have that attitude, you definitely can't do anything for me. So I think that, that I really strive for people to hire people of color, which have restaurants and stuff. I mean, I ask them, I said, so I don't see anyone of color working out here on the floor, And they go, and if they try to tell me, well, we don't have anyone that wants to apply, I go, well, maybe you should look like you want to hire someone, and then they'll apply. But I would definitely believe in that. But then I also have to figure out that if they have 10 employees and the population of Oregon is 4% of people of color, then I guess they would have only one. So if I go by percentages,
you do the math.
Yeah. But yeah, it's. I want to see Alberta clean up some. I want people to take it like it's their bedroom, their house that they're taking care of.
And I really love your defining community. But back in the day, what were some of the stigmas?
The stigmas were that Alberta wasn't safe. because of the prostitution, because of the gangs. But I mean, I knew people that worked for FBI, I knew policemen, and I would go like, a lot of this could have been stopped before it got to the point of where we are now. But the other thing is that the black community is not that big. So these people who are in gangs, these people who are prostitutes, these people who are panhandling, these people who are breaking in people's houses and robbing, are your kids, your nephews, your sons, your daughters. It's not like they're not a relative, because we just don't have that many people here. And so if you're not feeling safe with those people who are your friends who have kids doing this, then maybe we need to work from the inside out rather than trying to work from the outside in. And I think that's what holds us accountable. When I see a young man that I feel that needs to be a little bit corrected, I correct him. No, people don't necessarily like that, but that's just what I do. I go, because I'll tell you in a minute, if I hear someone sassing their mom, I'll say, excuse me just a moment, but I need to talk to your child. And I know we don't know each other, and I said, but you can't talk to your mother like that. You don't talk to them. And I said, and she goes, oh, well, I said, fine, sorry, but I just can't do it. My kids were not allowed to talk to me. Even now, as old as they are, still aren't allowed to talk to me like that. Because I tell them, I said, the one thing that will never change, I will always be your mother. And at that point, you don't have to like me, but you have to respect the position.
And that's what you have carried throughout, that's made this space what it is. I mean, your courage, your commitment, and the P word, your perseverance.
Yeah, a lot of perseverance, a lot of tenacity. I got told more times than I can really count on. I went to PDC for loans to do things. And I think I got told before I actually got a loan at least 5 times.
But you didn't stop.
Nope, just kept asking. And then finally they gave me a loan, and then even then I was not given the information as to how I could make that loan work better. So I just, did what I had to do.
So where'd you get that Fannie Lou Hamer spirit? I'm just gonna name it, sister.
Well, I think I got that as growing up, because my mother said no a lot of times. And I believe that, there's a saying that I saw one time, and I've always taken that to heart, and it is like, success isn't so difficult, you just bite it off and chew it. So it's like, if a lot of my friends said, well, Roslyn, this doesn't pencil out, this doesn't make sense. I said, if I get through processing this and see if it makes sense, or if I'm going to make money, I would have never done a lot of the things I did, because it didn't pencil out. No, I just did it because it was something I believed in.
I am so glad that you did. We are better for it. Portland is richer. And I bow to you, sister.
Well, thank you.
Alberta Queen. The ancestors are pleased.
Well, thank you very much.